Our heart goes out to the families of lost soldiers who laid down their lives for the unity of the nation. Quite often, the life of a soldier is solitary, brutish, and lost oftentimes in battles so that you and I could enjoy the breath of freedom. Usually, the families of these slain soldiers bear the brunt. Is the Nigerian government doing enough to provide succor to these less fortunate ones? Is there enough political will to contain the nation's emerging security threats? I'm delighted to have Nigeria's former Chief of Defense Staff and Force Commander, African Union/United Nations Joint Military Intervention Force in Darfur, General Martin Luther Agwai. He joins us on Arise Prime Time. Glad to have you join us on the program. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right. Has the country done a good job, just like I said a while ago, of remembering these fallen heroes and those still in active force? And in what ways are we honoring them, or is the nation just paying lip service?
Well, I would say to a large extent, Nigerians have actually shown some recognition and some appreciation of the job that the members of the Nigerian Armed Forces have done over the years. And we have to understand that Nigeria Armed Forces have been involved in global conflicts, including global peacekeeping. For peacekeeping, Nigeria started in 1960, just when we became independent.
Yeah.
And we have been on, as we are speaking now, there are Nigerian troops outside the shores of Nigeria participating in peacekeeping. First World War, we're a colony of Britain. We fought along the British forces. During the Second World War, we did the same thing. So before we change over to the 15th of January, we are observing, just like most Commonwealth countries, the 11th day of the 11th month of every year, which is known as Remembrance Day. And I remember when I was growing up, it was called Poppy Day.
Yeah, that's 11th November, before it was now changed.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but after, as you have stated, after our own civil war, we now wanted to honor all Nigerians that have fought and died either during colonial period or during our independence, and then with the unfortunate incident of the Nigerian Civil War. And officially, the Civil War came to an end on the 15th of January. And I think that is why the founding fathers thought it was a better day to remember. So we now march all the ceremonies to remember those who died in all the wars, including ours, and then all the insurrection and challenges we have now, all march together to the 15th of January.
Now you've brought up two issues, which of course I'll take one by one. The question of the Poppy Day, change to 15th.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a question on that. And then the question of challenges. There must be challenges, you know. So what are the major challenges, and how is both the government and your constituency, the army or the forces, how are they dealing? What are the challenges, first of all? But let's talk about the challenges, and then we'll talk about how they're dealing with it.
The challenges the military has. Remember that there's an old saying that God and soldiers, people respect them and look for them, when things are wrong.
Okay.
But when things are righted, the old soldier is slighted and God is being forgotten.
When he
So-
solves your problem.
So it's not a surprising thing that sometimes when things go so wrong, the crisis, not only in Nigeria, but in other countries. I remember I have had some training in the US,
Okay.
and most of young people who never knew anything about the First World War and the Second World War and even the Vietnam issue, started wondering, what do you need soldiers for?
Oh boy.
So, and that is the sort of thing until things are bad. But it's just like what somebody says. You need even you have cash, you need a credit card because you don't know where you will run out of cash,
Yeah.
and you need the card. So you have to prepare for it. So every nation has to prepare her forces for the eventuality. If it's not external threat, it could be internal, as we have been facing in Nigeria for over a decade now.
The banditry, the terrorism.
Yes, yeah. So these are all the things you have to prepare. You do not wait until you have them before you prepare. And because of that, sometimes you find people feel the military is a waste. We are very wasteful. You are preparing for war. They have not been at war. Then why are we voting money to train them? Why are we kitting them? Why are we building barracks for them? Why are we having schools and all this?
I just read the news a while ago before you came before this, where Rosse of the NESO, he was saying that, look, there has to be a re-engineering of the mindset
Yes.
to prepare for war. You know, that he was just talking about it, that you don't have to, in the light of what Russia is doing. So, I mean, people should prepare.
That is it. So we just have to get prepared. And to prepare, you have to then train people. And the thing is this, it's not easy. And I'm telling you from experience, it's not easy to then get somebody to run. He sees fire, he has a gun firing, and he's running there. You have to train the person to understand and to commit himself. And that's why you find that Nigeria and most other countries run a voluntary force where you volunteer to come. Nobody forces you to come. And you find that when people volunteer to do something, 9 out of 10 cases, they give in their best.
Yeah.
But I also say before you ask that in every setup, there are wrong people that come in.
Yeah, there will always
So
be.
sometimes you have some bad eggs that come into the military. Some come for a different reason completely and spoil what the majority of people are doing. And unfortunate thing, bad news is news.
Yeah.
Good news is no news.
Yeah, well, when you said that, I'll be hard put to say to you that isn't that the fault of the military not doing a background check on those bad ones that came in?
Yes, you could be right, but let's be very honest to ourselves. You're a Nigerian, I'm a Nigerian. There are pressures, and not all of us can withstand pressure. There are people who will tell you, I want my son, I want my ward, I want my thing, oh, my people are not represented, and then you start compromising. You start compromising, and in the process, you then find out that just one bad egg.
Spoil the one bad apple, spoil the whole bunch.
So
That
that
ca-
is it.
That can be very dangerous. I mean, take for example, when you talk about a doctor not being vast in what he does, and because of pressure he comes in, it's going to spoil so many things.
Right.
But let's get back to
Yeah.
the original. Originally, this day was marked on November 11. We talked about it, you
Yes.
know. We want to talk more about before the change to January 15th
Yes.
to commemorate the end of the Nigeria Civil War of 1970. What does this day mean to you? Some have described it as a reminder
Yes.
of the high cost of freedom. So what does it mean to you?
Well, if you look at the 11th, November 11th, it reminds every fighting person that it could be you that will not come back from the battle free.
That's true.
And remember, and there's this old saying that some of the soldiers said, and it's in some of the tombs, that for their tomorrow, we give out our today.
Yeah.
So these are young people, some of them 18 years, just very prime 20, who have just joined service. And because they want to defend, protect their people, they could pay the supreme sacrifice. But is it worth it? Are you prepared? And this is what we are always reminded in the profession. Are you prepared to defend the liberty and the territorial integrity of your country? Are you prepared to give up your comfort for other people's comfort, so that the majority of people will have peace? Are you prepared? And if you are, then it's worth the sacrifice.
It's worth the sacrifice. We'll talk more on that sacrifice. We'll have a case in point now of 70 soldiers. I'll get back to that later. How are Nigerians expected to participate in honoring these heroes? Are there what you will call deliberate, intentional programs, geared towards enlightening the populace as to how they're supposed to participate in this program? By the way, celebrating has been added to it.
Yes.
So you probably want to talk about that.
Right. Well, in the past, we have always been just remembering, which is very important. It's important because even myself, I come from a family that have long history of the military history life.
Okay.
I lost an uncle in the Second World War.
Okay.
Two of my uncles joined and came back. I'm the son of a sergeant major.
Okay, so it's a history of...
Yeah, so I understand when you now find people remembering your own, who have laid their life, who have sacrificed, suffer, some of them maimed, some died, just to keep the flag of Nigeria flying, is something to be proud of.
Yeah.
But then also, it's just like sanction. If you continue to sanction people and you don't give reward, you are not helping. It has to be balanced. So I think it's the right thing that the current leadership have accepted, that it's a good thing to remember, and we will continue to remember. But we also should motivate, find a cause to motivate those who are either injured and are still alive, and those who, when fought, come back like some of us that are lucky, back with their 2 legs and our 2 heads, our 1 head and 2 legs and 2 arms. So we should also feel a pat on our backs that we appreciate what you have done. You are lucky to have come back home alive, but we still appreciate it. So they're also worth being celebrated. And that is why I think it's a good thing to put the two together.
Yeah.
Remembering those who are gone, but honoring and rewarding and supporting those who are alive.
Now you talked about honoring. You took the celebration question, but I don't think you took the question of ordinary citizens, participating.
Right.
A deliberate, is that deliberate, intentional? Not all Nigerians, this is something that every Nigerian should want to participate in, in one way or the other. So I was asking whether there are deliberate intentional efforts geared towards inculcating that sense of remembrance into the Nigerian life, the people of citizens of Nigeria.
Yes, it's a good thing, and it's going to, just like every other thing we have today, should be a collective thing.
Yeah.
The media, the military itself,
Yeah.
and other Nigerians should begin to think and understand. I sometimes say, especially in the Nigerian context, now that people want things quick and now. We wanted to see the end of this Boko Haram, insurgency,
banditry,
all
kidnapping, and all the
banditry,
insecurity problems.
and they're now over a decade. People become impatient. Now, instead of appreciating, you feel that no, they're not doing well enough, they're not doing good enough. And it is important to sit back and look. Sometimes the casualty, you have just mentioned one now. You can imagine how your colleagues, and then what Nigerians should do, place themselves in two places: the family of those who have been lost.
Now,
And then not only the family, the colleagues. I know I have one time walked into the bathroom and shed tears because of a number of my colleagues that I've seen have passed away.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
It can be.
Very difficult.
Especially those that are close friends.
Close by. And you find you are standing in the trench or somewhere with a colleague, and the bullet comes, boom, he's gone, and you are lucky to be alive. It will ever remain in your memory how your colleague have just passed on.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that other Nigerians need to remember, and that it's not only the bad thing. Unfortunately, bad news, as I said, make headlines. So the little bad thing that one or two soldiers or military personnel have done, it flies, headline news. And then all the good things that others have done, breaking into dangerous places to pick up children, to carry food to others who are drowning and suffering, all this is not remembered.
Now you talked about, let's talk, there's a good thing that Governor of Kogi State is doing, which I'll bring up, but let's talk about this 70 soldiers. 70 soldiers were sentenced to death, later acquitted, but their discharge certificates and entitlements have been denied them up till this moment. They're still pleading with the president to, look at their case. One of them, a general, has been, the certificate is paid and everything has been done. This sounds like it's discriminatory. Why has not the 70 been treated as the general was treated?
Again,
and why is it taking so much time? I mean, they said they mutinied, but they were crying that they didn't have the. They mentioned this APG, AK-47 that the Boko Haram people had, and they said it was going to be a suicide for them to go in and fight those people. They needed the equipment, and so they were sentenced. Fine, the case was pursued, acquitted, but their discharge certificates and the entitlements have not been paid. But one of them has got his.
Well, I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah.
I am not very conversant with this, but I believe, since I am lucky, I had the privilege and luck to command the army and also the armed forces, I will say there is definitely levels of trials in the military. It's not, as people always say, that obey before complain, or that you just don't talk. No. Let me even tell you, I've said this over to many people. How many Nigerians know what we call DOBA in the military?
DOBA?
Yeah. Whereby you, as the commanding officer, or a general officer commanding or a brigade commander will sit with your men and they will ask you any question in this world and they have immunity. Nothing happens.
Okay, you're not going to punish them for it.
No, they ask you questions, some very difficult questions, some perception. And you know, sometimes perception are more than the reality.
Yeah.
And some of the cases that you are killing may be part of perception. I'm sure if you follow it, you will find, yes, there are exceptions to every rule. But I don't believe that it was deliberately done or it was done to show a segregation or favoritism. No. I think something that meets, if you really cross and cross-check, I think you get a better information. But remember that the underdog is the one who gets the loudest cry. People will hear him more. People will listen to them more. But there are rules about how you set your complaint. And remember, before you join the military, you are told the do's and don'ts. Nobody forces you to. If you don't feel you feel you have taken the wrong profession, very early enough you can say, no, this is not the place for me. I'm going.
Let me just chip in this one too while we're discussing. It's also disheartening to know that 32 years on, the ill-fated crash of the C-130, I'm sure you're aware of it, aircraft, one of the wives of the deceased said that many promises remain unfulfilled. It was the wife of a major general, and I'm wondering why, 32 years after. We're talking about remembrance and celebrating our heroes.
No, let me also say, you say wife of a major general.
Yeah.
No, there was no major general.
Major, I think it was a major.
Okay. I was part of,
major.
They were part of my students. In my division, division called B Division in Jaji, I lost 28 of them.
In that crash?
In that crash, the C-130.
Yeah.
Let me also tell you, it's only Providence. I was supposed to be in that aircraft.
Oh.
So I know most everything about it.
But that's the more
I arrange, remember that the cemetery, those were the first people to be buried. I was the chairman of the group that arranged for the recovery of the body, bringing the bodies, and the funeral that took place and inviting all the families. I was still the chairman that got all the properties of those officers to their family. But let me tell you, we have a difficult situation of mixing our culture and the military culture. Okay. The military initially does not recognize 2, 3, or 4 wives, only one wife. So,
up to now?
Now, because of pressure, things are changing. So if you now have 3 wives, and I will tell you a personal example of what happened. There was an officer who had 3 wives. And there was a car that the military gave for the family. Who among the 3 wives takes the car?
That's a tough one.
Then, there's another incident. In our rules, there is what they call a next of kin. Most of us that joined the military joined when we were single. I had my younger brother as my next of kin until I got married. Some did not change. By the time they died, officially, their next of kin were either their father. I know of an officer who put his father was late and he is late. So who is the next of kin? So these are all the technicalities of things that happen, that people now, out of ignorance, make a big story out of this thing. And yes, there were promises. By who? State governors make promises. They are not part of the military. State governors are not part of the military.
Yeah, of course.
But if they made a promise and did not fulfill, people see that the military had made a promise and did not fulfill. So these are some of the challenges.
Now you talked about it just briefly.
Yes.
It's interesting because talking about state governors in Kano, 12 million was donated, but I thought I should bring this up. Yes. This is interesting. Was donated by the government to the fallen heroes. 2 million of that money was from Yusuf, the governor himself. 10 million was from the 44 local government councils to an appeal fund. Yes. This is a step in the right direction. Commendable, you'd say.
Yes. That's very commendable. And that is where I say it's a total thing. If all of us will put our resources together, pool them together, and get trustworthy people to manage these resources for the betterment of all of us, especially the fallen heroes and those in the profession. We shouldn't leave everything to federal government because that is what it is now. Because the military is an instrument of federal government and not state government.
General Martin Luther Agwai, former Chief of Staff, thank you so much for your time on Arise Prime Time.
Thank you.